Thanks for having me here. I don't want to sound alarmist or dramatic, but I really believe that we are on a cusp of a revolution, and I'm here today to figure out what role you're going to play in that and what's really going to happen with it here in Palo Alto. Let me talk for just a second about a revolution that happened here not too long ago, and that's the technological revolution. There was the dean at the School of Engineering at Stanford, Professor Terman, who foresaw, like the Industrial Revolution, a technological revolution that would change the way that we communicate, that we live, that we work. And in this garage, which is over on Addison Avenue, just a couple miles away, Addison and Waverly, if you haven't been over there, Hewlett-Packard were convinced to come back by Professor Terman and start a company, HP. Now, thousands of people come every month from around the world just to look down the driveway and take pictures in front of this garage. If you haven't been there, it's pretty incredible to see what happens. The question is, in what garage will this next revolution happen? Where will it take place? We're talking, of course, about a different kind of revolution. It's going to use technology, but it's going to be about mobilizing people, getting people to do things in a way and at a scale that we never thought possible just a few years ago. We're seeing, of course, revolutions in the past year of people, a mobilizing of people that's dramatically different than what's happened in the past. But let's dive into what's really changed. There are, of course, standard models for mobilizing people. And let's just think about it here in Palo Alto. Let's say you wanted to open up Foothills Park, or you wanted to change bike lanes in town, or fund new libraries. The ways that you typically do that is you'd first think about getting people signed up and involved. Maybe you'd walk door to door, you'd put yourself out in front of Whole Foods or out in front of City Hall, you'd get people to sign a petition. Maybe once that gets going, you'd get people to write letters. You want them to write to City Council, so you'll try to get 10 people involved and get them to do a phone tree and reach out to 10 more people and get all those people to write letters. And pretty soon you've gone from hundreds of people to maybe thousands of people. That's the ideal. Then you could form a demonstration. These things take years sometimes to really pull together in terms of a movement. And this is the kind of model that would typically happen. Once you've done that, you need to communicate with folks. So then you're creating phone calls, you're creating meetings, you're creating standardized ways of communicating with folks. We don't yet know what these new models look like in terms of social media, which we're about to dive into, which are really exciting. But they are changing fundamentally the way that you organize people, the way that you mobilize people, and the way that you create change. When people now interview people of your generation and talk about what you want to do for your jobs, inevitably, the highest percentage of responses say that you want to change the world, that whatever you do in your job, you want to have an impact. Without question, social media is going to change the way that you think about doing that you think about mobilizing people to change the world. And we're going to dive into some examples of some of that that's already happening. But the bottom line is there's not a new model yet. I showed you that old model. These are kind of the trends that we're seeing in the new one. You used to recruit people. Now you're connecting and contributing in multiple different ways. I'm going to dive into the examples, but I'm telling you that the model's not yet set. The speed, the scale, the openness wasn't even imaginable 15 years ago. It's all being revolutionized. And the people in this room and the people in this community are most likely the ones that are going to shape this new model. They're going to decide what it can be. They're going to figure out how to use it to change the world. The question is, how are you going to use it to change the world? Thank you, Facebook. When you look at the revolutions in Egypt, Tunisia, that are happening across the Middle East and in other communities, assuredly, the work that's happening there was driven by a passion, by a common spirit, by a need for social change, for sure. But they would not have happened in the way that they did without Facebook, without YouTube, without LinkedIn to some extent, without Twitter for sure, and without mobile phones. We would not have had the revolutions that we just saw without those technology tools. These are signs really just taken off of the internet. But what they point out in particular is that people are starting to understand, and youth in particular, at an organic level, because they're technology and digital natives, that this is a new way of communicating, that this isn't something that needs to be learned, this is part of their DNA. And because of that, they're going to be able to move leaps and bounds ahead of where other people have mobilized. The other thing that happened through social media with these revolutions is that people were able to connect in immediacy, with the media around the world in a way that had never been possible before. That may seem sort of mundane, but the bottom line is that when you're standing in front of a tank, when you're facing thousands of people in a mob, and you know that you have the support of millions around the world and millions are watching you, you are empowered to make change. You feel differently about your connection to the world. And this technology is providing that empowerment. It's providing that power. Let's talk about a couple of specifics, and they're exciting. VOZ is an organization that's not that old. 2004 is when it started. And it really sums up the work that I'm talking about here. What they want to do is they want to take social issues. Think about whatever social issues you really care about, whether that's global poverty, environmentalism, mobilization of people for social change. And they galvanize people, often through petitions and other things, to go and make change on a policy level, actual policy change. In Brazil, not too long ago, they mobilized 2 million people to lobby to enact a law that passed that would not allow legislators, once they have been convicted, to serve again in Parliament. This is something that Brazil has been talking about for decades. And for the first time now, through using this technology, they were able to mobilize millions of people to create change. The power is astronomical. Let's talk about an example here closer to home. Here's some of the stats that just show how the penetration is happening so quickly in the United States. Almost 80% of people on the internet, broadband use at home, which really causes change, increasing year by year. Cell phone use, news online, by the way, a quarter of those 61% are getting their news on cell phones as well. You guys know, obviously, that statistic may seem low for you, that social media use for folks 18 to 29 is high. But what's incredible is just in the last 5 years, we've seen a 40% increase for folks in that 50 to 64 range. Across the board, people are adopting this technology in the US. So no surprise that we see Change.org step in. If you haven't interacted with Change.org, go check them out. They're doing incredible work right here in the US. They adopt the petition model, old school, back to that early model. Petition, get people engaged, get them mobilized, get them to talk to policymakers. And the results have been fantastic. If you follow the stories about AmeriCorps, the nation's community service organization, and the way that they were saved was a mobilizing of people through Change.org to lobby congressional members to save that organization. You also saw this last year on Mother's Day, a mobilization to lobby companies to say that they had to have fair trade practices for flour purchases and bringing them into the US. I could go through example after example, but again, what they're doing is using technology, Twitter, email, Facebook, to get people engaged in policy change right now, right here in our country. But it's not just mobilizing people. It's also mobilizing dollars. And this can have a truly transformative effect around the world on social issues. School supplies. You can talk to any teacher in America and they will tell you that they open up their own pocketbook to help pay for supplies. We are facing a crisis in funding and education in this country, and teachers are often taking the brunt of it, but they're happy to do it. And they're buying science kits, and they're sometimes, if they can afford it, buying computer or software equipment, different things for kids within schools. In steps DonorsChoose.org. Pretty simple model. Teachers can go online, they can post their needs, whether it's that science kit, it's the computer lab that they need, it's art supplies, it's a violin, And funders from all across the country, any of you can go online and find things that you care about. Maybe you're really passionate about photography, and you find a school that's in Louisiana that really needs cameras. They can't afford it, and it's going to cost them a couple $100. You can fund that immediately. So it's a very simple model. Within just 8 years, they've raised $80 million, 500,000 supporters across the country, 194,000 projects fully funded, 45,000 schools, which means about 5 million students. This is just the start. It's the democratization of philanthropy. Anyone can get engaged in things that they're passionate about and fund them at a personal level. With DonorsChoose.org, once you fund at $100 or more, you then have a relationship with that classroom. The teacher will send information about the progress that they're making, the impact that your donation has had. So it's a personalization towards a social cause, and it's truly transformative. Another one that I want to talk about here very locally from a very direct social impact is I Care, We Care. And this is a 17-year-old in San Francisco who said, folks my age want to be involved in these global issues and we really want to make change, but we're not sure how to do it. So she formed a website. And already it's taking off and it's winning awards, and MIT and Yale have already adopted it, and high schools across the country are adopting it as well. The fact is, the new model isn't yet created. We don't yet know where it's going, but it will completely change the world in the way that we mobilize people, in the way that we get them involved in social movements, in the way that we raise money, in the way that we change policy. And so the question is, who's going to shape this new model? There's no folks better to do that than the people in this room and the people of your generation. You understand this technology. You use it natively. You know how to make this change. The question is, how will you shape the model so that others can learn from it and can really have a broader impact around the globe? And what role will you have in this revolution? This is the center of entrepreneurship and technology. We have delegations that come to Palo Alto every single day from all around the world. We just had 10 members of the EU Parliament in town. Just a few weeks ago that, was that 3-4 weeks ago that I met with President Obama while he was here in town. And inevitably, he pointed out as well, this is a mecca. People make trips from around the world here to figure out what's next. What is that next wave that's coming? What's the next revolution? The fact that you were lucky enough, from wherever you came or originally born, the fact that you're lucky enough to go to school here, go to high school here, be surrounded by these people, be surrounded by these ideas, means that whether you like it or not, you're right at that cusp. There's a lot of NBA players who say, hey, I didn't want to be a role model. I didn't choose that. Well, maybe you didn't choose to be a revolutionary and to be an entrepreneur. But the bottom line is, because you're here, people are going to look to you for that leadership. So what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to help that revolution? Thank you very much.